Hello and welcome to Dice Punks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 24, the party splits and disasters loom. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hi, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Dusktear, Regal of Nothing, who recently became aware of the more mass-destructive potentials of his abilities.
Hi, I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Lissa, the bitter and bodacious Duchess of Fury.
I'm Dez, and I will be playing Rumnet, prophet of the Obsidian God and force for escalation.
Turned out to be pretty easy, didn't it? Excellent.
I was really tempted to make a Tom Lehrer reference there.
An easy temptation to give into. So applause on your ability to resist it. Thank you all. Before we do get started, though, let's do character stat growth and then our recap for ourselves and our listeners. So I think that starts with Romnet needing to do his XP roll.
Yep. Because why have a system when you can't, subvert it? Paraphors.
That's good for an experience. I think I know the answer to this, but do we have any character stat growth?
So we do actually, and the reason is that I have to go directly to tabletop jail because I broke the rules last time and did not learn my School of the Insouciant Monkey skills in order. I skipped one, unintentionally, I assure you, but I have enough points to learn the one that I skipped, and we haven't been in combat since, so I feel okay about it. So
I think it's probably fine.
We're all good if I keep my drunken monkey, and additionally I spend the 3 points I have on Monkey Fist, which basically means if I successfully spoil an attack by dodging, I get to counterattack. It's more specific than that, and I will speak the full rules into the congressional record real quick. If you roll your coordination plus dodge skill and successfully successfully apply a gobble die or dice, you can make one attack to an opponent whose attack you ruined. The strike acts like an area die. He rolls one die and takes a point of shock to the location that turns up. This ignores armor. This attack isn't spoiled if you take damage and is not improved by your weapon. You can only inflict this damage once per round, however, no matter how many attacks you spoil.
All right. So thank you for the read-off there. It's helpful, I'm sure, to our listeners and to me. In case the terminology is unclear, listener, gobble dice refer to dice that are specifically used to counter other players or non-player characters' actions by sort of removing dice from their sets. They haven't come up in this campaign because I don't make people roll very often, and we've only been in combat a few times. But they are a thing in Rain. And one of the very sort of trademark, weirdly elegant systems. So, thank you for both catching that, because I wouldn't have, and for remedying it in a timely manner. And would I be correct in assuming that there is no other character stat growth this time? Wonderful.
Definitely not for me.
Likely not.
All right. In that case, it is time for Dusk to summarize our previous session for us.
I think I can do that. Scrolling through the lots of recaps we have now. This has been a good campaign, and a lot of stuff has happened. Okay. Well, we'd made our way to Theret, Lissa and I, and Romnet and Apacia. Lissa and I had specifically made our way to Tanu, priest of Palaran. He asked if we'd come to surrender, which we had not. Tanu and his god were unhelpful, indeed implacable. His goal, it seems, was total conquest and the exclusive worship of Palaran in Taraxis, and indeed it seemed everywhere. They were building horrific living siege engines with which they meant to lay waste to the city of Theret. He was otherwise reasonably polite. Romnet and Apacia, meanwhile, had a discussion, I assume about me. Probably they also discussed Romnet's system for communicating with Imbi. Anyway, by means of supernatural perception, and at some small cost to myself, I discovered two things. First, that the Shadowed Lands lay largely undefended. And second, that Palaran did not seem to have any nobles per se, only things made divine. Palaran being the deity of wilderness, verdure, shadow, and rot. Once we had reconvened, Romnet had the brilliant and terrible idea to send something counter to all of those notions at once, namely a city into the Shadowed Lands. That is, to bring the fight to the god. Cities being peopled, as a rule, this gave us some pause, and we thought it best to confer with our own god. Lyssa and Apatia stayed in Theret, while Romnet and I returned to Fermata. At the gates, we saw an encampment of Lightward, Thad among them, who seemed more ready than ever to leave. En route to the manifestation, we encountered Ia, Viscountess of the Sun, who seemed surprised, and not unpleasantly so, that we'd found ourselves a common enemy out from the Shadowed Lands. She suggested that we contact Ventis.
And that's pretty much where we pick up, although, thank you, by the way, for that recap. It was excellent. I am going to buck, sort of maybe the natural flow here, and I want to start back on that wall in Theret, where Lyssa and Apatia have been left to their own devices. Returning then to the resumption of action after our session break, we rejoin here Lyssa and Apatia atop the wall north-facing of Theret, and Romnet and Dask have been gone a moment or two. Full dark has set in here, and the fires and eye shines of the various parts of the encampment outside of Theret sort of fill your vision when you face northward, and if you look southward, the oil lamps, torches, and candles of the city have come alight in the past half hour or so. And Apatia, for her part, seems kind of contemplative, staring off into the middle distance north of the city, leaning one hand on the wall in front of you where it's crenellated, but perhaps not to a degree that would be useful in an assault, just kind of to express the overall futility of attempting to defend these walls in a traditional way. Does Lyssa get up to anything in particular now that her brother Nobilis and the prophet of her god have returned to their chancel?
I would probably suggest to Apatia that we should check in with Dask's family and let them know what we observed in the camp below, and the fact that they are building siege engines and should probably prepare for war.
She nods once and says, "That does sound wise. I think I will probably leave most of the talking to you. Being around that many people, as I think you can probably imagine, is a little bit of a cacophony for me, and I don't know how they feel about having an alien nobilis in their midst." She tears her gaze away from the middle distance north of the city and says, "If it is all right with you, in fact, I might go in search of Imbi. I can only imagine how isolated she feels currently, and no matter how uncomfortable it makes me, I feel I should try to be there for her as a sort of noble sister of sorts. I hope you won't think me rude for abandoning you."
No, of course not. I think that's very kind of you to look out for her.
She nods somewhat morosely and says, "I suppose when things change, they change rapidly and all at once." And she gives you a sort of wan smile that is made all the more uncanny by the sharp teeth that it shows. And then, seemingly on a sudden impulse, gives you a tight and brief hug, sort of around your waist, because she is quite a lot shorter than you. And then pulls back and says, "I do hope to see you later this evening, though. I could really use just some time with a friendly face. And she gives a decisive nod and then waves and leaps off the wall rather than taking the stairs down into the city.
I probably startle when she full on leaps off the wall, but then remember Nobilis. And after that, make way back to the tier house.
All right. While you are traveling, we will jump back over to our conversation in progress here in Fermata. So, Dusk and Ramnet, you have mounted the steps to the manifestation where Io was sitting looking somewhat forlorn, and noticing your presence seemed quite a bit more animated. And she had just suggested that if you were looking for some sort of immaculate stasis in a landscape, that the place you might look might be Ventis. But I did not give her a chance to elaborate on that before I ended the session. She, for her part, does seem to expect that that will mean something to you.
Can I roll lore to actually know things, not to clue dispense?
Sure. Hey, I mean, can we both roll lore to see if we know even a little?
Can both roll lore? Please do. In fact,
I would like to note for the record that you need to up our metal roll tally.
Ooh,
hell yes,
hell yeah. Okay, sorry, I was having a hard time finding the number of dice here.
You're all right.
I'm about to roll a voluminous 7 dice.
Ooh, you are more loreful than I.
He's loreful good.
That was damn good. That was damn lawful good.
I have to go to sleep for 1,000 years.
That is, I mean, spiritually, it doesn't touch the roll that Des just got, but it is paratense.
Well, still a flying success. So, in fact, both of you have heard of this figure before, not in the context of anything that you've come to learn about the nature of the world since your involvement in matters of Mott, but it is a name associated with the Carolan wastes and the trade caravans that come across it. Let's see, Ramnet, you are aware from having interacted with these people at certain points in your much more widely traveled past, that the traditional greeting and farewell of the Calaran Wastes traders includes this name, though you lack the strong basis in the language that they speak amongst themselves to know exactly in what capacity. You assume it would be some sort of benediction. Dusk, you have not had the interaction with the Carolan Waste traders, but you did find a couple of very interesting books in the Confluence during your time there that tried to make sense of the culture of the traders of the Carolan Wastes and speculate about the wider civilization that they seemed to be part of from a Taraxan perspective. And it is hypothesized there that Ventis is their deity. Something associated very closely with the desert itself. In fact, some scholars have hypothesized that they worship the desert as a god.
That is helpful and hard to formulate into an immediate reaction.
My work here is done.
So what I'm getting at him is that you like leaving Drew flat-footed in front of other nobilis.
I think, Des, that you have played enough of tabletop games with me to know that that is the preferred sort of state that I like to leave players in when faced with non-player characters generally.
I mean, that or body horror, yeah.
Fair enough. So,
the listener is reminded that may or may not be foreshadowing.
Even I don't know.
All right. I guess my reaction then is I attempt to sound like I know what I'm talking about, and I say I think we'd had in mind more a city than a desert, but that's intriguing.
Ia looks a little bit puzzled and opens her mouth, and then seems to understand something and closes it without responding.
I will try to non-verbally prompt her to share her thought. Possibly a charm fascinate.
Yeah, I think for anybody else it would be Charm Graces, but because you will have that
Right.
troubadour background, you will roll a Charm Fascinate for 3 plus a
Also,
master die.
to wiggle smoking void eyebrows, that's fascinating.
It is indeed specifically romantic outlaw charm.
Indeed.
So that is a pair of 10s already, becomes 3 10s.
All right, that is pretty substantial. Muzzle tov. So Ia looks thoughtful at your prompting, and she says, "Well, I have never been to the Caroline Wastes myself, but it is said there are cities in the desert. I don't know how they manage it. The cities in Sirtha, even in the very, very driest parts, are located near water, so perhaps there are sources of water deeper in the Caroline Wastes. But I imagine that Ventis would not appreciate the relocation of one of her worshippers' cities without some kind of bargain being struck. However, certainly a place where your interests might coincide. The goddess of the desert, by reputation at least, is no friend of the forests, so..." She shrugs a shoulder. "That would be where I would start, especially since I have been getting the feeling that your god and mine are not likely to make common cause anytime soon." And she sort of grimaces as she says this.
There does seem to have been recent and quite open conflict between them. I'm glad to see that doesn't necessarily mean eternal war between us.
She shrugs the other shoulder independently and says, "Perhaps it should, but I am..." And she shakes her head and then looks at Dusk directly in the eyes for the first time in the conversation. She says, "I will be honest. I am cut off. I cannot communicate with my fellow nobilis outside of Fermata. I cannot communicate with Sirtha, and I cannot leave. If it is in your power, I ask that you release me. I would just as soon be gone as I am sure you would be rid of me."
And are you the only of your entourage remaining here, then?
"Of course."
Our first stop for help and counsel was going to be a bit closer to home. I gesture at the manifestation. This is a matter we can certainly bring up. I cannot promise a straightforward answer, our god being our god, but I have no desire to imprison you here.
She nods with little enthusiasm, but seemingly with gratitude, and says, "I suppose that is all I can ask. Thank you. I will return to my quarters in your manse." And she gives a slight bob of her head and starts to walk down the stairs.
I will gesture toward the manifestation to Dusk.
I do think we should make our way. Imprisoning other nobilis seems different.
Par for the course?
Those are the two options.
Well, again, I run into the problem of my being new around here.
Well, I'm just speaking to the general inability of others than us to leave.
And yet the rest of her retinue made off at the first opportunity.
You say this as you enter the manifestation and the door closes behind you, at which point it was going to be when I mentioned that Ia having left, both of you suspect that she was lying about her being the last of her entourage.
Of course she was.
Fermata. And she didn't do an amazingly good job of it.
If it didn't come across in vocal performance, yeah, when I said the rest of her retinue, one eyebrow would have been at the hairline, basically.
Certainly. Just wanted to make that clear for the listeners who do not have our video chat to refer to.
And
you're
also
missing
years of listening to Adam.
Also that. You also miss so much of me talking with my hands, dear listener. It's a gift and a curse.
But yeah, no, it does seem like she was, well, Ia probably is capable of lying okay, but she did a poor job of it there for whatever reason. And it left you both feeling like there are probably at least one, maybe more, Sirthans still in the city.
I mean, that seems like a domain site thing that...
Can I sound for Sirthans?
Certainly. This would be realm divination, I assume.
Yeah, exactly.
So before you do any of that, your realm being 2, which would be good for lesser divinations without any miracle points in it, I will need you to roll for me knowledge plus scrutinize for 6 dice.
Knowledge plus scrutinize. Interesting roll. Okay. Coming right up. That is a pair of 7s.
All right. So, as you are sort of preparing to do this divination, you are sort of thinking back about the times that you have divined for Sirthans in the past, what you've learned in the past about it, and you are met with the conundrum of whether or not to include any penetration on realm divination, because you can be relatively certain that the mortal Sirthans left. If none have come back in the time that you've been gone, then there are no mortal Sirthans in the city, at least none alive. But if you've learned anything recently, it's that divinations are slippery at best when dealing with the divine. So in order to actually perceive any noble Sirthans who are in Fermata, you would need to have an appropriate level of penetration.
True. And we're not sure. Let's see. We have a rough estimate of Ia's brightness and of Ramush's brightness.
Correct.
Trying to think if we ever got a sense. Well, the other Sirthan is possibly a smoking crater, so that might not be relevant. Okay, so I get the basic divination. The basic divination is level 2. So anything past that, I'm spending points.
Correct.
Well, and this, since we're descending the steps, this is something I could even ask Romnet in character, but how important do we think this information is? I'm quite confident I could find it, but it might require a divine means of seeing someone attempting not to be seen.
I think it depends partly on how immediate our worry about the Sirthans is.
They do seem not to be even in our top 3 problems currently.
And for the record of the Sirthan Nobilis that you know the level of spirit for, Ramush, who you can be relatively certain is not still in the city, is spirit 3, and Ia, who you just spoke to, is spirit 1.
So would it be one spirit or 2 spirit, or 1 miracle point or 2 miracle points to divine Ia?
It would be 1 to divine.
Okay,
Ia.
so you need to meet the Autoritas,
not overshoot it. Yeah.
Now, so that means that you could spend anywhere from 1 to 5 miracle points to go from minimum penetration to maximum plausible penetration for a Nobilis.
I think I wait on spending any points. I think that we're going to get all the answers when we get to Mott, so everything's going to be clear shortly.
Clearly.
Clear as ink black clouds. But I think because it's free anyway, I do the basic sounding just to confirm that so far as I can tell, there are no mortal Sirthans or divine ones who aren't actively resisting the ping. And indeed, I guess my thought is, if I don't see Ia, then I know she's hiding herself. So I've still learned something.
So when you do the level 2 realm divination without any penetration on it, you detect 0 Sirthans. How active this is exactly is a little bit up for debate. You don't, for instance, have to gather your Autoritas around you to resist miraculous surprise attack. So it may just be that it's not so much that Ia is detecting your divination and resisting it, as it is that she is simply not opening her Octoritas to miracles within Fermata. But either way, you detect 0 seer things with a penetration 0 realm divination.
0 seer.
All right.
Ah.
So we actually did learn some interesting things there. We did learn that she still has an Octoritas, even cut off as she says she is, which, you know, she didn't say anything about
Which
losing
may or may not
powers,
be
but-
the truth.
Right.
I
true
mean,
enough.
I don't personally know this in character, I am pretty sure, but out of character, the removal of a shard is a one-way ticket.
There's
it
not
is-
a safe way to do that.
100% of the
she's-
time fatal.
Okay.
Cut off means not necessarily losing a shard, just being unable to communicate for whatever
Right.
reason.
Correct.
Sure.
Yeah, since we've not met anybody quote unquote cut off. And again, she might not be. What someone can or can't do in that state. This is just me trying to figure out, since we're pretty sure she's lying, I didn't learn anything that useful, but it didn't cost me anything to find out what little we did learn. So, hey.
So we're actually going to leave the two of you descending those steps and check back in with Lissa. So you have walked to Lyd Manor, the seat of House Tyr, and it's not like shut down for the evening, but it is under sort of like nighttime operation at this point. Lamps have been lit, candles have been procured, and the gates have been closed, although the guards are at least briefed enough that when they see an enormously tall woman in a blacksmith's apron, they know to let her in. Are you looking for anyone in particular?
I am going to look for Uncle Melly, and I'm probably going to inform the nearest guard of that.
So yeah, you let the guard at the gate know that you are looking for Melissus.
No,
you say
not
Uncle Melly.
Melissus. I say Uncle Melly.
He blanches when you say Uncle Melly, but does not comment on it. And he says, "Right, your ladyship. Well, Melissus is within, but probably in his chambers." And then he sort of dithers for a moment and then shouts for a page. Boy in his tweens runs up, and the guard says, "Please bring her ladyship to Melissus Tyr, if you would," and seems very uncertain about how to comport himself in the presence of a demigod. At which point the boy just kind of goes, right, and casually gestures you over one shoulder, seeming to perceive you more as a visiting craftsperson than anybody of importance due to your attire.
That possibly suits Lissa fine.
I would
Yep.
assume so. And you follow the page into the manor. It is large and labyrinthine, and the page brings you to a door in a finely appointed hallway and says, "Here are the chambers. Melissus Tyr, so we'll leave you here, I suppose." And he hems and haws and kind of dithers about without actually leaving.
I'm gonna pass him 3 coins of like what I believe is a very generous, perhaps over the top tip for his trouble.
He sort of, without looking, like takes the coins and then looks down and sees them and makes kind of a squeaking sound, and then bows such that his head almost hits his knees and goes, "Thank you, your ladyship," and then runs off as though he is afraid you are going to take the coins back. He is sprinting down the hallway, and you watch him go for a moment.
I call, "You're welcome."
As you turn back to the door, it opens, and Uncle Melly, in not like his pajamas, but sort of like out of his formal clothes and in like a dressing gown and holding a small goblet of wine, has opened it and is going, "What in the hell was the... Oh, hello, Duchess. Please, come in." And he gestures you into his sitting room.
I kind of follow him in. Do I see where the little goblet of wine came from? Does he have like a carafe or something?
Yeah,
set
he
up?
does. In fact, actually, on a sort of side table in one corner of the sitting room, there is what appears to be a silver decanter and some matching goblets. And your eye is drawn to it because your grandmother is currently standing over the side table pouring herself a glass and looked to be in the process of asking who was there when she spotted you. And
She's there.
she has not
I
said
knew it.
anything. She is
Knew
fully
it.
in her night clothes.
Yes, of course she is. I disregard her completely, and forget my initial thought of pouring myself a glass of wine for what I'm about ready to discuss, but kind of angle myself towards Melissus exclusively and say, we've returned from the encampment on the shore beyond the wall. Unfortunately, I have no good news. Dosk and Romnet have gone back to consult with the Obsidian God on our next action. But we did discover that they are building siege engines, albeit very fleshy ones, and they're tents. So you should most likely prepare for war and instruct whoever you gather to fight to stay far away from me on the battlefield. And I make myself glorious as I finish that statement to punctuate the importance of keeping the people away
Right.
from me.
Uncle Melly sort of opens his mouth but doesn't say anything immediately, beholding you in your glory. His eyes kind of go wide and shine a little bit. But into the brief silence, Ilari says, "Girl, you should speak more respectfully to your as she catches sight of you and then clears her throat and says, Melissus deserves a little bit more respect than you're showing him. Should call him sir at least." As she sort of walks up and stands next to him and sort of crosses her arms and tries to look reprimanding. Never did have any sense of propriety.
And you will address me as the Duchess, Mima.
She blinks and says, "Like hell I will."
I kind of laugh, and she's holding a glass currently.
Goblet, but yes.
I am going to take the goblet out of her hand and take a massive swig out of it. I'm going to look her dead in the eyes. I'm going to say, if this comes to war, when you see what I've become, I hope you see your hand in it and understand that you've never truly seen me at all, Mima.
Command plus intimidate, please. And I'm going to give you a bonus die for the fact that you are both glorious and badass in this moment.
And also took her wine.
Yeah, that's going to up the pool to 3 dice just straight up.
Yes.
2 8s.
Nice.
Only would have been better if it had been 3 6s.
Yeah.
The color drains from her face a little bit, and her hand kind of hangs where you have taken the goblet out of it until you put the mostly empty goblet back into it, which she looks down at and looks back up to you and mutters just barely audibly, "Always knew something." Drinks the rest of the wine, at which point Uncle Melly, whose eyes have slid to Ilari, go back to you and says, "Yes, well, we've been preparing for war, but did you get any useful intel while you were there? Siege machines or creatures? That is helpful, certainly, though I suppose if they're creatures, they should be as vulnerable to arrows as anything else."
Creations more so than creatures was the general sense I got. They are being constructed by priests and priestesses of the god in the Shadowed Lands. I did learn that they will not accept surrender. Their goal is to raise our cities and replace them with wilderness.
So, point of order there. Are you intending to lie to him about this? Because they absolutely would accept surrender. What Tanu told you was that you as nobilis would not be suffered to live. They do plan to destroy the city, but not to exterminate the people.
The lie is unintentional. That I
Sure.
just took away that they're going to just completely annihilate the cities.
Yeah. No, they don't really want the cities, but they are not planning to just like indiscriminately murder people. They want the worshippers.
They emphasized that they would be their version of merciful to those who surrendered and bent the knee and got with the worshiping program, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, that's
The appeal for you to surrender was to sacrifice yourself to save the civilians. Basically, there would need be no fight if you would but surrender, which of course would mean that the two of you would die. Was the message that Tato had given you.
So I would probably rephrase that last portion. Thank you for the refresher.
Sure, no problem. We do these a little ways apart, so.
Yeah. So I'm going to say their intention is to destroy all the cities, replace it with wilderness, and subjugate the people to worship Palarin.
He nods slowly and says, It seems that the idea of holy war is no longer merely fiction in Taraxis, and he contemplates his wine. He nods and says, Thank you. I'm sorry to see that my nephew has buggered off at this important time, but hopefully he can beseech the Obsidian God for some help. We have plenty of weapons, plenty of arrows, we have a lot of fire, but as you've seen, our walls were not really constructed for an adamant defense. It's never really been necessary. But, well, it also does not seem as though their army is what you might call disciplined.
Not at all.
You know,
and you have a 2-woman army at your disposal until Dosk and Romnet return with the Obsidian God's favor.
He cocks his head and says, This may be untoward of me, but under the circumstances I think you can see your way to forgiving me for my curiosity. What exactly do you mean, 2-woman army, and to keep people away from you on the battlefield? Are you volatile?
Not volatile, but I have a way of... You should just ask your prophet.
He knits his brows together and goes, I thought you said he went... Oh, you mean Brother Umber. Well, if I can find him, I shall ask him in the morning. Did you get any indication of when they might be ready to press the attack?
I did not. It seemed like they were still assembling the siege engines. And would I have gotten a sense of how far along they were? I knew they were recognizable, but...
Yeah, hard to tell, but given, the timetable that you sort of have been given the impression of by the story of the siege, probably not too far away, but you'd be surprised if it was, in the next 24 hours.
I relay that information and kind of describe the progress I observed being made on the siege engines, even in the time that I was in the tent.
Mm-hmm. Melissus kind of sits down in an easy chair in his sitting room, and Ilaria, for her part, wanders over to a window and broods out of it in a somewhat wounded and sulking way. But Melissus sort of looks down at his drink again and looks back up to you and says, I don't suppose you think that there would be any wisdom in something like a sortie. The idea of having to fight on the walls is, well, I'll understate it as unpopular among the other families in Theret. Having not had contact with demigods as we have, the other merchant houses are, well, I think, eager to reap spoils that they imagine could be had in the camp, as well as to be known by the rest of the cities as the defenders of Taraxis, and he loads it with a ton of scorn.
I'll have to admit I'm a blacksmith. I'm not familiar with war lingo. What are you suggesting?
If we were to take a force outside the walls and hit them while they didn't expect it, well, it would be popular. I'm asking you if you think it'd be effective.
It would certainly catch them off their guard before they are able to construct siege engines and force their way into the city.
He nods a little bit and he says, That is the hope. The worry, though, is that our entire force that we can muster from all of the houses, even if we start arming some of our non-men-at-arms with spare weaponry, only really comes to about 10 or 12,000 on a good day. We'll be, as I understand it, quite seriously outnumbered.
Or I could provide a distraction. and you could seek to sabotage their siege engines in the tents, light fire to them.
He raises an eyebrow and he says, must be some distraction. Well, if we were to sortie, say, to the south, if you could provide a distraction in the north that would keep them from bringing reinforcements down their lines, the biggest advantage that we have, as I understand it, is that we can concentrate our forces, and if they wish to maintain the siege, they cannot. Doesn't seem as though they really understand siege warfare, given that they haven't tried to close the port, but it has been very expensive to supply the city by sea, and it would be helpful to secure a line through the cordon. He nods once and he says, I'll bring it up at the city council tomorrow morning. We might be ready to move as early as tomorrow evening, so I'd appreciate it if you'd be on standby. And then he sort of looks left and right and motions you a little closer.
I lean forward.
He gets very close to you and murmurs and says, and I would appreciate it if you would be a little more civil to your grandmother. I understand there's bad blood there, and I frankly don't want to know, but, well, it appears that if you're around here, you won't be rid of each other for a while, so. He kind of trails off.
I can agree to that, under the condition that you return the favor to Dosk. Should be very proud of him.
He leans back and sighs and says, you know, Duchess, the damnedest thing is that I am. It's just, well, habits are hard to break where family is concerned, and I inherited mine, so I can agree. I will try to do better. He finishes his wine and sort of gestures at it. He says, feel free to drink before you turn in, but it sounds like we should probably get some rest. You're welcome, of course, to the guest rooms here, and he kind of glances at various parts of your attire and says, I'll understand if you wish to seek rooms in the city. He fishes around in a drawer and hands you a small metal seal in a leather wallet and says, this should get you complimentary lodgings almost anywhere in the city, though I do recommend staying away from the docks. I'm sure you can handle yourself, but it wouldn't necessarily be very restful, if you know what I mean.
I appreciate your hospitality and your time.
He nods. He says, a lot of us merchant types can stand too much on ceremony and pomposity, but I'm under no illusions. You've done me, my family, and my nephew quite a few services, and I wouldn't have it said that Melis's tear forgot those who helped him. Besides, he sort of gives a lopsided smile and he says, I'm fond of you. You're straightforward and you seem a good sort. Even if you aren't joining the family, well, it's nice to have you around. And he sort of, does that thing where, middle-aged and older guys kind of like slap their knees as they stand up. And he says, but for now, I think I shall be turning in myself. And despite himself, his eyes sort of slide over to where your grandmother is standing by the window.
I ignore that and just kind of smile at him and give him a hug.
He returns it awkwardly.
And say, good night, Uncle Melly.
He snorts. He says, good night, Liz.
Okay. I will leave him be to whatever gross stuff he's getting up to with Mima. And go find Apatia.
All right. We will take this opportunity to transition back for now to Fermata and the Heart of the Chancel. Dosk, Romnet, you have been descending an indeterminate number of stairs. I suppose if there is anything in particular you wish to confer about on your way down, we could establish that now. But if not, we will have you emerging into the well chamber. As usual, it is slightly changed from the last time you were here. It is both significantly more and less cave-like. The parts of it that are stone are no longer rough-hewn, but simply natural flowing stone. The parts of it that are representative of Dosk and of Lissa, however, are more finely and ethereally wrought than ever. The two-headed snake is two-headed once more and seems to be in more of a poised and waiting sort of position. The roughness of its carving is gone. You can see, even if you reach out, feel individual scales on its entire length.
Don't touch it, it bites.
Yeah, no plans there.
The alcove that seems to represent Dusk has carved books and papers on the shelves and on the desk that you feel you could pick up and read.
Any interesting titles?
Interesting. Roll a lore for me, Romnet. Pretty strong suit for you. That's what, 6 dice?
Yep, pair of 5s, pair of 6s.
Okay. It takes you a moment to realize that the writing on the spines of the books are in a language that you have seen once or twice, but do not read. It is supposedly a script that was imported to the northern part of the continent beyond the Shadowed Lands from some land further north across the sea in ancient times. You had seen it a couple of times on older volumes in private libraries in Taraxis, and you kind of suspected at the time that they were spinning a bit of a yarn, that this was, something like a newer creation, maybe for some kind of hermetic order or secret society. But now you think maybe they were telling the truth.
I will ask Dusk if he can read the titles of those particular volumes.
Should I also roll lore?
In fact, you don't have to. When you look at them, they are titles. They're titles of books you've read, actually, mostly in the Confluence, though not exclusively. So a lot of works of natural and, I guess, what in our world would be called continental philosophy.
I convey this information and say
is existentialism a Taraxan or a Sirthan discipline?
I'll get back to you on that.
Is it like French versus German existentialism? One is about like whether false premises can result in correct conclusions, and one is more about how we're all completely alone.
I mean, that's the second to last step of it. The last step is, so make it up for your own fucking self.
Right, that's the important part people miss. Yeah, so I convey basically all of this, and I say like these texts taken as a whole are quite relevant in that they're about making it up as we go along and lacking a plan.
I will laugh and then give you a kiss on the cheek.
Oh,
I will blush, if not furiously, then certainly notably.
Your hair Miyazaki's during this process.
Spectacular verb. Spectacular verb.
That's a great image.
So, this exchange having been done, I presume that the two of you turn toward the well.
We do.
So, Das,
certainly I do.
Presuming that you are taking the lead here as the nobilis, which may be an incorrect presumption, my question to you was going to be, in what way do you attempt to communicate with Mott?
That's a good question. I think because we've had so little success with sensible words before, I try assuming the aspect of nothing and thinking very loudly, we would make war on wilderness, verdure, shadow, and rot.
Interesting. So, you assume the aspect of nothing. Ramna, what do you see when Dusk assumes
Remind me of the rules for, or the like operative bits of the description for the aspect of nothing? Because I was also about to ask that. Please.
I was going to ask Drew for you to read it.
Sure. So there's so much there, and yet the quote from the rulebook is, characters with this gift of domain are so close to their estate that they may replace their body with a construct of their domain. In Dusk's case, this means that he can become an empty vessel, the sort of vacuum that nature abhors. What someone sees when he takes this form will vary wildly by person, but it is not necessarily the case that they see nothing, which is to say that Dusk does not necessarily disappear. He may instead take the form of a confusing exception to the rule, appearing to, for example, an attacker or interlocutor, to suddenly take the form of whatever would make the current conflict irrelevant or absurd.
You are a humanoid that is like the night sky, dark and outlined, and you can see figures in it. And there are stars, but they do not illuminate.
Well said.
I love it.
Yeesh. Yes.
So, for a moment or two, Rumnet, you behold this aspect of nothing. As Dosk, you try to broadcast your intent to your Imperator. I am loath to do this again, because I've already bent the rules once to do it, but I do want you to roll your knowledge plus sense, 2 stats instead of any skills. 6 dice to roll.
I can do that. A pair of 7s, and also a pair of 1s, if you care.
2 successes, actually, and this one is kind of interesting. So, after a moment of standing there, wearing the mantle of nothing upon you, your sense of the space around you, which is always perfectly dark, you can see things in it because of Mott's nature, not because there's any light there. But the vision that you do have becomes occluded. It's almost like getting tunnel vision, but it starts in the middle of your vision and spreads outward rather than from the outside in. And you can feel the presence of Mott around you, but as always, Mott is formless. Rumnet, for your part, this part you also experience. Not as darkness flowing up from the well or out from dusk, but centered on you as well, filling your vision. This is an interesting experience because the last time you remember having this experience was when you were brought to Fermata for the very first time.
I was brought here.
Well, in a manner of speaking. So, Dusk, Mott does not, in this case, speak to you using words, and you sort of infer that still riding somewhat high from their recent victory over Sirtha, Mott has, if anything, become more capable of communicating with you. Mott communicates to you through images, feelings, and sort of noetic understanding that they are very good at combating that which is their opposite. If an imperator or a noble or a phenomenon involves light or openness, communication, or sobriety, then Mott is very good at countering it. Part of why Mott has commissioned you and Lissa is to handle those situations where Mott's enemies are closer to their own portfolio. Imperators of night, of shadow, of storm, for instance. In the case of Palaran, Mott seems to have been hoping that they would turn their attention northward and distract Sirtha. This is less of a remark or a communique from Mott than it is an impression that you kind of get from a variety of sensations. You infer it. Mott is reluctant to directly try and bring their power to bear on Palaran because it could have essentially backdraft for Mott's own portfolio. However, Mott has seen in your mind the suggestion of involving Ventis and does not disapprove. The idea, however, of putting Fermata anywhere in the physical world, Mott strictly forbids. Within that, you get the feeling that Mott is pleased by your resourcefulness in thinking of a solution to the situation with Palaran's army around Theret, that going for the god themselves is a clever idea, and that weaponizing anything you have to hand that would seem to counter Palaran's portfolio is a way that you are encouraged to think. With that, Mott recedes from your consciousness, and it takes you a moment to get used to having a body again, having been that close to the thoughts of something kind of incomprehensibly vast and inhuman leaves you feeling itchy to be physical and to have thoughts emanating from a brain rather than some kind of spirit mind. As for any kind of help from Mott, you find, once you can see again, that you are holding in one hand a small obsidian totem that seems to show, well, it's like a goblet on one side and a knife on the other side. Almost like something you would see on a playing card. But it's very, very smooth, especially for obsidian. This is not unusual for Fermata, but you understand, sort of intuitively by looking at it, that if you are able to destroy this, crush it in your hand, or dash it on the ground, it will give you an influx of miraculous power. You're not sure how much, because such things are hard to reckon quantitatively, but Mott has given you something of a boon in their approval for your nascent plans. Rumnet, you spent this interval, seemed relatively shorter to you, reeling through what seemed like a cosmos in which the stars were going out one by one, feeling exhilarated and terrified at the same time, and you return to your own body standing in the heart of the chancel with both a manic grin on your face and, perhaps for the first time since you acquired your smoking void skull, tears wet on your cheeks. This is pretty much par for the course for Mott, just more so.
I will have tried to inquire about the Sirthan remnants in the city.
You think at first that Mott is not going to answer you about this, but you find that when you have returned to yourself, you have somehow, thankfully your fingers are still mostly intact, but somehow used a finger to scratch into the rock wall next to you, written out the word 3.
Well then, I have now used my fingernail to scratch into obsidian.
Mm-hmm.
That's not worrying or anything.
Why would it be? I can't see any reason. So, you have both more or less simultaneously returned to your own senses, although it takes both of you a long moment to reorient yourselves.
Once I do, and once I clock what I have done in response to my own question, I will plaster myself to Dusk's side.
Oh. Done.
You meet no resistance, and in fact, we probably run at each other. There may even be a slight impact, both because I need to remember I have a body, and because comfort is welcome. There are no words until there are a torrent of words, and I try my best to explain what I've experienced, beginning with the fact that words may not be the most useful way to talk to the big they stairs, and then explaining that it seems they approve of our plan, and that perhaps they've even, and I waggle the mysterious object, I keep talking well past the point where I realize you're probably not listening to the words and are just happy to hear something.
I'm listening to the words. I am happy to hear something. I am wondering, based on your statement, assuming you state it, that they were hoping that Palaran would turn northward, that we still might not be better off, generally and in the eyes of them's in the well, that are to use a Sirthan city, regardless of whether or not Ventus would approve, particularly since, that would require contacting Ventus somehow, possibly. Separately, probably before that, when you're talking about words and their inutility regarding a boss, I might make a slightly desperate joke of, oh, I'm glad you didn't just jump into the well this time.
I keep talking a moment past that, saying something like, and depending on which way you turn it, it looks like it, before catching what you've said and guffawing. And say, I'm glad to. And then out of nowhere, I say 3, noticing the scratches in the wall.
Yeah, I'm probably sort of pointing over that with fingers that are still somehow whole, but probably have, like, obsidian dust under the fingernails, and that's not troubling.
For sure.
Or sharp. That is apparently the number of remaining Sirthans in Fermata.
Well, that's useful information. If I haven't already, and let's say I haven't, I reach up and dry whatever tear is still there with my thumb. And I don't know how that feels to a finger, but
Dear listener, Adam is just grinning.
He's just shrugging, clearing a tear from the void. My well-regarded shoegaze album.
For the record, I would listen to a Drew Gaze album, if you will.
I would too.
If there is anything else that Dosk and Romnet wish to accomplish in the heart of the chancel, we can certainly do that. Otherwise, we might leave you traversing the stairs back up instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we comfort each other on the way back up, but I think that, the conversation, the important exchange of information has taken place / is taking place.
Excellent. So, we left Lissa as she was searching for Apatia. So we will rejoin that search in progress. I think the operative question is, in what way are you searching for Apatia?
I probably would initially think about doing the sort of ping that I did with the Dosk wall in Fermata several sessions ago, and then realize, well, she won't receive that ping. Because as much as she's a friend, she's not necessarily within our familia. So instead, I'm going to create a very tiny pocket of furious joy around me, hoping that the sensation serves the same purpose.
And then
and probably head to where I would think she would be with Envy.
Okay. So yeah, you sort of wander through the city in the direction that you imagine or guess she might have gone, at the very least cutting a line across the city so that you sort of maybe come into her range. Oh, just make a luck roll. Roll a d10 for me and tell me what you get.
4.
4. All right. Well, let's see. You wander around for a while with this sort of pocket of furious joy around you, and you observe the relatively subdued wartime nightlife of Theret. There are plenty of people who are still out, but they are mostly packing themselves into their favorite pubs and taverns and drinking and then tromping home morosely. At the very least, Theret does not seem to be short on beer, wine, and spirits. This is a little bit of a bring down, though it helps that you have surrounded yourself with a pocket of furious joy. And you wander through, sort of the part of the merchant's quarter between you and kind of the more middle-brow districts. You wander, not quite randomly, but a little aimlessly, let's say, through that quarter for a while before making your way down on the hill a little further into the less well-to-do districts. And it's a decent little span before anything particularly seems noteworthy, and you certainly don't see Apatia within that. But you do, after a short sort of stint through the edge of the docks district, hear somebody cry out in evident pain from a nearby alleyway.
I'm going to go check and see what's going on.
You sort of dart to the mouth of the alley, and it's fairly dark, but that doesn't seem to inhibit you very much these days on account of Mott and all that. So, glancing into the alley, you see that you have in fact found Apatia and Imbi, and a couple of what appear to be Taraxan sailors who are currently clutching their faces and yelling as they sort of try very, very hard to get away from Apatia, who has blood on her mouth. Imbi is
In which nobody is shocked.
Yeah. Imbi is pretty much watching it.
Maybe not nobody.
Do the sailors count?
Spoken like Romnet. Sorry, the peanut gallery will shut up over here.
Thank you, Wattler and Staldorf.
I will assume, like, my first gut instinct is that the sailors tried to be untoward with Envy or Apatia, so I'll approach Apatia after taking a brief stock to make sure at least Envy and Apatia are fine, and be like, what happened here?
Apatia, upon sort of detecting your presence, turns with like teeth bared and then sees it's you and goes, "Oh, Lissa, good to see you. These fellows are being rather uncouth, and, well, I tried to get them to leave, but they didn't seem to take me seriously, so, she sort of kicks a foot in the, sort of loose, dirt and rubbish covering the cobblestones of the alleyway and says, I might have eaten them a little bit. They'll should be okay, but, well, it seemed the thing to do. I had to make sure Imbi was okay." She shrugs and looks a little bit like when you scold a dog who is very sorry.
Adorable. I'm assuming they're like bleeding, but they're not completely down. They're probably just
They're not
at their faces.
Even in the alleyway anymore. By the time Apatia finishes saying that, they have run. They are around the corner and gone.
All right. No harm, no foul then.
As they disappear, Apatia grimaces and spits and wipes her mouth. She goes, "They did not taste very good." And then she looks a little thoughtful and cocks her head and she says, Would you miss a little bit of blood?"
I don't suppose I would.
She sort of licks her lips a little bit, but gets more of the sailor's blood on her tongue and goes, and kind of like tries to get it off again and says, "Well, I may take you up on that, but let's find somewhere else first. I did find Imbi," and she gestures with two hands where Imbi is standing, and Imbi has literally got her hands folded in front of her and her shoulders back and is just kind of watching the conversation impassively.
I smile and wave and say, "Hey, Envy!"
She inclines her head at you graciously.
Oh. I will suggest that we don't stay in the docks, per recommendation from the Tier family, so we could go find lodgings in a more sailor-free area of town.
Apatia kind of nods, somewhat enthusiastically, whereas Imbi again inclines her head graciously and then makes to follow where you lead, as she doesn't know her way around. Apatia, for her part, sort of reaches a little up to grab your hand and then extends her other one to Imbi, who looks at it and looks at Apatia and then looks at it and then tentatively places a hand in Apatia's hand.
The adorable chain hand holding is just
It's very
so
good.
wholesome.
All right, so where are you taking them?
I imagine during cutting through the city, I probably saw some form of inn that looked comfortable enough or caught my attention for particularly Lissa reasons.
You know what? I'm going to leave this to a roll.
Fun times.
It's going to be a Sense Plus Sight roll.
Not fun times. I thought you were the one rolling.
Nope. Funny times, not fun times.
It's fun for me.
Surprising no one. I have no pairs, and the highest was an 8.
Okay.
She's going to end up in whatever the Theret equivalent of a Hard Rock Cafe.
Oh, no.
You do remember a few places, actually, that you would love to bring them back to, if only for your own purposes. But fortunately, at nighttime and with so much wandering, your sense of direction, not amazing. You can keep the uphill-downhill axis pretty well in mind, but the first couple of places you try to find, you don't actually know where to look for them anymore. So you end up just kind of like as you're passing by being like, this looks good enough. And it's only after you have entered and started to try to draw the bartender's attention that you realize that this is, yes, an inn, and yes, a tavern, but also a bordello. Emby, for her part, seems not to have taken any notice. Apatia is regarding the goings-on here relatively curiously, but seemingly without any particular alarm.
How old is Envy again?
I believe she's in the 6 to 8 range.
I'm gonna immediately kind of cover her eyes and escort her right back out and make sure Apatia comes with me.
You have
and
to
be like, Envy, this is a conversation we can have later when you're older. I'm happy to give you all the ins and outs, rather literally. Just not today.
She, Emby, for her part, sort of looks at you, looks around, looks kind of down at herself, looks at you again, and shrugs exactly one shoulder very slightly, but makes no complaint about being pulled out of the place. Apatia, however, you have to actually, like, sort of grab the back of her shirt. Not quite drag her out by the collar, but sort of like give her a tug to get her started. She seems very interested in whatever her synesthetic sense is telling her about this place.
Let's find someplace that's a little bit more child-friendly.
Yeah, you take a couple of more minutes, but you find a place that is sort of in the same relatively inoffensive band as the first inn that you and Dosk visited on your first time in Theret. Not the same place, but it has a lot of a similar vibe. It's stone, half-timbered. The common room is large, but not very full. And it's seems to be catering toward those in the employ of the major trading families. So it's maybe it doesn't see a lot of kids, but also is more a place of business than a place of pleasure, which maybe dampens Lyssa's spirits a little bit, but is certainly much more of a universally appropriate venue.
This one gets Aunt Lyssa's approval.
In short order, you have arranged for, I guess, however many rooms you wish to arrange for. Within reason.
I will address this question to Apatia and Envy.
Envy does not seem to respond in any way, and Apatia says, well, and looks around and says, I suppose we could have as many as you wanted.
2 rooms, please.
The bartender nods, giving Imbi especially a very weird look. You hand over the money, and he hands
Flash
you
the little wallet, too, I'm sure.
Yeah, that actually is, I'm glad you remembered, because he starts to read off the amount and then sees the wallet and immediately backpedals, bowing so fast that he almost clocks his head on the bar. And without you even having to say anything, begins to prepare and then serves up 2 glasses of what appears to be a house vintage of wine for you and for Apatia, and a small cup of tea for Imbi.
I tip him handsomely.
He looks horrified, but eventually does take the money.
When I see the horrified face, I reassure him, friend of the family. It's my pleasure to tip you. You're fine.
He gets his breathing under control. Thank you, milady. And immediately tries to go see to one of the very few other patrons still in the common room.
Yeah. So I hand out the glasses accordingly if he has not already done so.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring Apatia up to speed on the tactical plan that is being presented to the council tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. She listens, but doesn't seem to fully understand, sort of the reasoning behind the decisions, but she does reassure you that if it's a distraction you need, I can stand up to an awful lot of mortals at once, and gives you a shark-like smile.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about Mavia. I imagine that she would be quite the distraction. And between our two powers combined, I think we could manage quite a lot.
Apatia sort of, her shark-like smile turns a little bit more to a friendly grin as she sort of clasps your wrist as you are speaking and sort of runs her thumb over your tattoo a little bit and says, I am sure that we could.
I probably smile at her even if there's a tinge of slight pain around the edges of it.
She seems to catch a little bit of it, but simply continues running her thumb over your tattoo and sort of uses the other hand to pat you on the shoulder a little bit, then looks at Imbi and says, well, I think perhaps it's time at least some of us turned in. I am certain, Imbi, that you are just as capable as anyone else, but that's no reason to, deny yourself the pleasure of a good night's sleep. And Imbi cocks her head and then kind of gives a, okay, kind of nod. And Apatia sort of extends her hand.
Could I get the bartender's attention and see if there's a notepad and pen or some sort of canvas available?
You say basically that, and he says, oh, of course, my lady. And he doesn't quite sprint because of the confines of the bar, but goes as fast as he can to the back room, and he comes back with a relatively thick sheaf of relatively fine paper, 3 inkwells and 2 quill pens, as well as a cloth for cleaning the nibs, and says, do you think this will suffice?
That's more than enough, thank you. And I just take a very large fistful of coins and set them on the counter in gratitude.
He looks at them and goes, "Milady, it's truly our pleasure to serve. And seems to be remembering your previous conversation about tipping and takes half of the coins with him as he goes to see to another table, leaving all of the writing supplies with you.
I won't push it. I kind of gather them up and I turn to Patient and B and say, well, and B, do you think this would help? If you need anything, you can let us know.
She kind of nods slowly and then uses some of the signs that she had worked on with Dosk, and Apatia sort of watches raptly, and then Imbi takes one of the quill pens, dips it, and rather than writing, draws a little bit. A stick figure sort of leaning over a table or desk with what Apatia explains is the Diamakor version of like a question mark over their head, and Apatia says, I think that she only got a little ways into learning to write before she left. So pictures are an option, and I can try to teach her the rest, but it will be slow going in the meantime. And she sounds kind of pained.
I smile and say, well, pictures are a great start, and we can teach you the rest, and we're here to help, and I hope you won't hesitate to draw some more lovely pictures if there's anything we can do.
She gives you a nod and then takes her teacup and begins up the stairs. Apatia helps her get settled into one of the rooms and then sort of stands indecisively in the door looking torn.
I mean, you're welcome to bunk with me.
She gives a tentative smile and then says, Does the room include a meal?
I assume so.
She looks a little hesitant and sort of glances around and says, well, I mean, I know we had talked about it, but I am quite hungry still. The sailors were not at all nourishing.
Yeah, that's fine. Just I'll obviously need to have my wits about me tomorrow.
Oh, no, of course. I would not want to take too much. And as she enters the room with you, she sort of, pulls the door closed behind her and then says, why did we leave the first inn?
So it was something called a bordello, where individuals make a living by selling their bodies for pleasure.
I think I might have misunderstood. My miraculous understanding of Taraxin is not always perfect. They buy and sell people?
Not people, not people themselves, just time with them.
Oh, I had no idea that anyone could charge money for their company. They must be very pleasant indeed to be around.
In my experience, it depends on the individual.
She nods and she says, "That has been my experience as well. But as far as I'm aware, no such trade exists in Diamacor. It is fascinating to visit new places and see new things. Certainly the sensations there were novel.
I can only imagine.
They are similar to things that I have detected before, but were also somewhat different. It is hard to explain, I suppose, to someone who can't detect it, but certainly nothing I've ever felt before. Fascinating, at any rate." And she sort of moves a little closer and says, "I feel very, well, demanding, but, well, your blood is very nourishing, and
I
most
hold
pleasant."
my wrist out
Yeah,
and be like, I don't know how this works.
She glances down at your wrist and sort of licks her lips a little bit, and then some color rises to her cheeks, and she looks slowly up from your wrist, kind of traveling upward towards your face, and says, "I wonder if it isn't too discourteous of me if I might not pick another source." And her gaze settles on the base of your neck.
I move my hair out of the way.
And she sort of again licks her lips seemingly unconsciously as she sort of leans in close, and then she moves your hair where you sort of put it to one side to the other side so that she can expose the side that your tattoo goes up. And she says something in Diamok that you have heard a couple times before and you think is kind of on the same wavelength as Bon Appetit, although low and seemingly to herself. And then very slowly and gently sinks her teeth into the sort of spot between one side of your throat and one side of the main tendon on that side of your neck, and stays there for a couple of moments. By the time she finishes, she is not quite sitting in your lap, but has gotten very close to you. And she sort of sits up, as usual, leaving no wound. You're a little lightheaded because she was, drinking directly from your neck, but she doesn't seem to have taken like a ton. And she sighs and kind of leans into, sort of the shoulder down kind of to the side of your chest where she is now sort of entirely resting on you. And she says, "It is so tiring to be away from home, but it is wonderful to have such reliable company. You are very impressive, Lissa." And then it's interrupted by her licking her lips a little bit.
Thank you. And the whole time this exchange has been going on, my arms have been kind of moving around trying to figure out, like, okay, do I kind of provide her support? And then when she finally leans into me, I do put a arm around her shoulder to kind of hold her upright. And I say, you're very impressive too.
She gives a small, light chuckle that doesn't even, move her shoulders in your embrace, and she says, "I'm glad you think so. Certainly everyone in Diamacor did, but none of them ever held me close like this. I don't think I knew what I was missing." And she sort of rests her head on your shoulder a little bit, and she starts to sound a little drowsy.
I bring up my other arm to kind of hold her closer.
She kind of snuggles a little closer and says, I am glad that you came to Diamakor. And though Mother Nix might not be happy to hear it, I am glad that I came with you as well. And she slowly kind of drifts off.
I probably, trying not to wake her and holding very still, pull a blanket up around her.
And you begin to pass the night in this way. So we will catch back up now with tracking back to when Dusk and Romnet have emerged from the stairwell of uncertain numbers of stairs and back into the manifestation.
As we are climbing the indeterminate distance, I will inquire of Dusk both whether we should go back immediately and how we might go about contacting Ventus.
Would it be worth giving Ia a chance to deal plain with us? We now know more than she told us. Perhaps we can catch her off guard and find out whether there's something we don't know about contacting Ventus, because the solution seems good, but almost too good. If we end one war and begin another, we may regret it.
Well, I would imagine that the contacting of Ventus would be a negotiation to demonstrate that what we are planning to do is not only for our benefit, but would also benefit Ventus as well. Wolf.
You have just been sort of, sensorially...
That is in character.
Set through a ringer. No, in character I laugh and I say, well, you're quite right, of course, and I suppose we owe it to ourselves to try. There's no peaceable solution, but maybe there's one that's not...
Well, I mean, the other option is we simply draw a Seraphim city. It would presumably not destroy the city by moving it, but it would be a strike at both of them, potentially. Both Palaran and Seraphim. Since it seems that the conflict between them and ours, rather theirs and ours, is not yet concluded.
Well, then if we were to make an offer to Ia, then the offer itself would be quite clear. Deal with us plain, and explain the status of Ventus and what we ought to say were we put in touch, or a Sirthan city will find itself in the Shadowed Lands. I should warn you, as I don't think I have, that I know, deep within me, I can do this. But I know just as surely that I won't be any good to anyone for a while once I do.
Perhaps your boon may be of some assistance there.
One would hope. Again, I know it'll help, and just as surely I know that I don't know how or how much.
Of course. Because why would our boss ever deal plainly with us?
No. All the available gods forfend a little bit of clarity. Are you all right? That seemed a lot. I mean, it was a lot for me. I can only imagine that I look at his fingernails.
It was a lot. I don't know the degree to which I was doing that or that was done with me, but my fingers appear unharmed, although I will definitely have to take care in getting the obsidian dust from beneath them.
Then our course is clear. We give Ia precisely one chance to be honest with us, and then we do what must be done. We make for the manor. Do I see any acolytes on the way?
So, as you are having this conversation, you've emerged into the manifestation, and there are acolytes within, if you wish to call one.
Well, I ask for the best nail clipping devices in all of Fermata.
Seriously good nail clippers.
The acolyte blinks slowly, tilts their head, and says, "It shall be done, my lord," and bows deeply, and then walks back to precisely what they were doing before.
Obliged, Timothy.
You get no further response. And then you emerge onto the steps of the manifestation, leading down into the square. And before you can take more than a couple of steps, your attention is drawn by someone calling Romnet's name. The voice is in fact familiar. You have encountered this fellow before. He was, last time you saw him, near the manifestation, holding a missive, seemingly in Romnet's hand, arranging a rendezvous of some kind that Romnet, of course, had no recollection of writing. Now, he looks disheveled, a little wild-eyed. He's even been changed, as have so many of the residents of Fermata, somewhat. His hair has been replaced with sort of a tuft of seemingly kind of amphibian frills. And when he spots you, Romnet, he sort of jerks to and sort of looks at Dosk and then over at Romnet and says, "I'm here. I understand. I won't let them have you." And turns a scowl on Dosk. And that's where we'll end our session.
What?
What he said.
Oh, well, I suppose we'll learn more about it next time.
In which another one of my exes comes back to haunt me.
Same one. Same one as before.
Same one as before.
Yeah, there's no league of evil exes here.
You're all defeating my reference.
I get the feeling that was an intentional decision that we all made simultaneously somehow. Everybody can have one mortal XP, though.
Hooray!
And we will...
Ultimate Monkey King, here I come.
To find out what it does. But that concludes this session of Dice Punks. Thank you for joining us. I hope our players and our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll all join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found almost any place one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com, and on Twitter as @dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell. Say goodbye to the kind folks at home, players.
Thanks for listening, and if you're going to go through an inexplicable and incomprehensible experience, it's good to have someone you trust by your side.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember, it's important to be polite, but if they're not polite to you, fuck it.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you for listening, and if you find yourself with inexplicably changed exes, make sure that you are aware of their whereabouts better than I seem to be.
And as the poet once said, "Beyond the desert dunes, eye of the sun is hot and carving. Have we been led astray?" Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and stick around through the admin stuff. There's a DOS fact, or rather, a DOS debunk, waiting for you at the end of it. The songs in this episode, Theme of the Dice Punks and its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Regal of Nothing himself, Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who has appeared on the podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet, where she goes by Anything So's Embroidery. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by Robin, the player behind Lissa, the irrepressible Duchess of Fury. Rain and the One World engine it runs on were created by Greg Stolze, whose work can be found in a frankly astonishing number of cool places, but you should visit gregstolze.com to get a handle on it. Nobilis was created by Jenna Caterin Moran, can be found alongside much of her other really intriguing work, both in and outside of tabletop roleplaying, at farandsunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, well, that is reward enough on its own, really. But if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating or reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks after show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
So for a bit of a change today, here's a story widely believed, but one that I'm fairly certain isn't true in the slightest. Well, it's perhaps slightly true, but only just. Call it a Dosk debunk. The story goes that when my esteemed grandfather Croesus Tyr was a man of 19, he made a journey to the Shadowed Lands, against the advice of his parents, who were not accustomed to having their advice ignored or acted against. Depending on the version of the story, his boat either was or was not sunk by a squid with the face of a man, and he either was or was not met at the shore by huntsmen with wings like dragonflies and eyes like honeybees. They were not friendly, or else they were. What every version seems to agree on is that he survived. One or more crew members may have survived as well. For many years, one did not have to look far to find some old captain who claimed to be one such. But my grandfather apparently made his way deep into a wood where the trees either did or did not sing like sirens, and he found some ancient temple and drew down deeper into an ancient labyrinth and deeper still to the heart of it. Then he found, the stories say with refreshing consistency, a man with the head of a bull, and a bird of prey with the head of a woman. He fought them and won or lost, or he engaged in a game of chance or of skill or of strength with them, and in any case, they came away with him, back to Taraxis. They settled, the three of them, the story goes, in a house on the shores of the Gulf of Balatan, and lived together no less than a year. Then, again, some consistencies in this story, the bird woman left, but the bull man did not. And indeed, the Minotaur of Nema, as he came to be known, never left those shores, even when old Croesus did, making his way back to Theret, prodigal but within reason, to resume his duties to the family. Croesus either did or did not, indeed either does or does not, still visit a strange house by those shores from time to time. Now, my grandfather is many things, and over the course of his life he has no doubt been a great many more. I can imagine him in love, but it's difficult to imagine him going out of his way for anyone quite so much for quite so long. The story is, I imagine, mostly a piece of propaganda about his negotiating skills. He could talk a minotaur out of a labyrinth and so forth. I have no doubt that he met beguiling foreigners in his travels, but the truth is likely a good deal less romantic. There is, indeed, a strange house on the coast of Nema, but I'm fairly certain there's no minotaur in it, though I'll admit it's a little difficult to let go of the notion, and I'll admit, too, that I've never brought myself to knock on the door.